One sentence shattered the room. Princess Charlotte had barely finished speaking when Camilla answered with a remark so cutting that Catherine immediately moved toward her daughter. William froze, anger flashing across his face. But the reaction nobody expected came from Charles. The king turned toward his wife, abandoned every trace of royal restraint, and made it unmistakably clear that a boundary had just been crossed. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles had expected the private family gathering at Windsor to remain controlled. Windsor, one of the royal family's principal residences, often serves as a setting for official duties and private family discussions. Charlotte mentioned the ceremonial role she had been preparing to perform, speaking confidently, clearly eager to do well. Camilla's answer changed everything. She told the young princess that royal prominence had to be earned before it is displayed, turning an innocent comment into a wound within the family. Catherine moved first. She stepped closer to Charlotte, lowered her voice, and made it clear that nobody would shame her daughter for showing confidence. The Princess of Wales, William's wife and Charlotte's mother, understood why the words mattered. Royal children grow up under pressure, where a careless remark can become something they carry long after adults forget saying it. Charlotte went quiet. Catherine noticed, and the silence hardened her resolve. William took one step forward, but Charles stopped him before the prince could speak. The king's anger broke through with startling force. He told Camilla that Charlotte would not become collateral damage in tensions between adults, and he repeated the point when she tried to interrupt. William stared at his father, surprised not only by the volume of his reaction, but by the certainty behind it. Charles sounded like a man defending more than his granddaughter. He sounded like someone recognizing an old conflict returning in a dangerous form. Camilla did not apologize. She looked directly at her husband and told him that he knew exactly why she had said it. The queen consort, a commonly used description for the spouse of a reigning king, had just exposed the deeper fracture beneath the exchange. Catherine heard enough to understand that Charlotte had walked into a dispute that began long before that afternoon. Catherine guided her daughter toward the door. William remained behind. Charles then told Camilla to stay where she was, and the room fell silent again. The insult had lasted seconds, but the resentment beneath it had been building for far longer. What Charlotte represented inside that family was about to become impossible to ignore. Every royal rupture has a moment people later identify as the beginning. In this fictional story, it happened 3 weeks earlier during a private rehearsal for a Windsor charity ceremony. Nothing dramatic occurred publicly. Nobody shouted. No door slammed. Yet one decision concerning Charlotte left Camilla visibly unsettled, Catherine suddenly guarded, and William convinced that an argument nobody wanted to acknowledge had finally begun. Charles had arrived determined to keep the rehearsal simple. The Windsor Young Leaders Reception, a fictional ceremony created to recognize young people serving their communities, was meant to connect the monarchy's older generation with those who would represent its future. During the final planning, the king unexpectedly asked Charlotte to accompany him during a short presentation. The role was minor, but the meaning was not. Standing beside the monarch would place the young princess close to the center of a carefully watched family moment. Catherine hesitated almost immediately. She did not want her daughter pushed too quickly into expectations that even adults sometimes struggled to carry. William agreed, telling his father that Charlotte should be allowed to grow into royal life rather than be shaped by it too early. Charles listened and reassured them both. He said the appearance would be brief, appropriate, and entirely without pressure. Charlotte would simply stand beside him, greet a few guests, and leave when the formal portion ended. Camilla remained quiet until the decision seemed settled. Then she questioned whether Charlotte was being given too much prominence for her age. Catherine answered carefully that the idea had come from Charles, not from her, and she repeated that she had originally expressed doubts. The queen consort did not challenge her directly, but the tension was obvious. William heard something beneath the words that went far beyond concern for a child. He later told Catherine that this sounded less like protection and more like anxiety over who was becoming central to the monarchy's future image. Charles brought the discussion to an end during the final rehearsal. He personally directed Charlotte to the place beside him and said, "You'll stand here with me." Camilla closed her program, the printed order used to guide participants through a ceremony, set it firmly on the table, and left before the rehearsal was finished. Catherine noticed immediately. William did too. Neither followed her. Charles confronted Camilla privately that evening. She told him the Wales family was being elevated too quickly and warned that long-established roles were being rewritten without proper discussion. The king answered with one firm instruction. Whatever disagreement existed between the adults, Charlotte was to remain outside it. Charles believed that warning had ended the matter. 3 weeks later, when Camilla attacked Charlotte directly, he understood that it had been ignored. From that moment, the confrontation at Windsor was no longer simply a disagreement between husband and wife. It had become a test of his authority as both king and grandfather. The door had barely closed behind Catherine and Charlotte when Charles turned back toward Camilla. William remained near the table, saying nothing. The king did not begin with protocol, explanation, or diplomacy. He asked one question. Why had she deliberately spoken to Charlotte that way, after being warned weeks earlier to keep the child outside their disagreement? Camilla's answer transformed anger into something far more dangerous. A battle over who believed they had the right to shape the monarchy. Charles reminded her of the Windsor rehearsal and the warning he had given that evening. His instruction had been clear. Whatever tension existed among the adults, Charlotte was not to be pulled into it. William listened in silence because he understood that this confrontation had to begin between husband and wife. The Prince of Wales, the title traditionally given to the heir to the British throne, knew his turn would come. For now, he watched his father demand an answer. Camilla refused to call her words an attack. She insisted she had been correcting what she saw as too much attention being placed on Charlotte, and argued that the family was encouraging a child to carry symbolism she was too young to understand. Charles rejected that defense. The queen consort, meaning the wife of a reigning king, had crossed the boundary he had drawn, and he told her so without softening a word. William finally stepped forward. He did not shout. He told Camilla quietly that his daughter was not a strategic symbol for adults to manage, reward, or diminish. His restraint made the warning sharper. Charles said nothing for several seconds, allowing the words to settle, while Camilla stared back at both men and refused to retreat. Charles then asked the question that changed the confrontation. Had Camilla chosen Charlotte because challenging Catherine directly would have created an immediate fight she knew she could not control? Camilla did not answer. She did not need to. Her silence landed harder than any denial, and William understood at once why his father's anger had been so intense. Charles removed his glasses and set them down. Then he made the decision Camilla had not expected. Until trust was restored, she would have no involvement in decisions concerning the Wales children. The king made clear that this meant family discussions about their appearances, ceremonial participation, and planning. Camilla called the move emotional. Charles called it necessary. William left that room believing the warning would remain private. He was wrong. His father was already preparing to turn those words into a boundary inside the family, and that decision would soon reveal who held influence when loyalty, parenthood, and royal authority collided. By the following morning, Charles was no longer speaking as an angry grandfather. He was thinking as the monarch. Alone with William, he reviewed exactly what had happened, then made a decision designed not to punish Camilla publicly, but to prevent another confrontation. The distinction mattered. This was not exile, scandal, or spectacle. It was something colder, a deliberate restriction of influence around William and Catherine's children. Charles kept the meeting private because he wanted clarity, not another explosion. He told William that decisions involving George, Charlotte, and Louis would now rest more firmly with their parents. The Prince of Wales, the title traditionally used for the heir to the British throne, understood the significance immediately. This was not about ceremony alone. It was about who had the right to shape the children's public roles, private boundaries, and emotional safety. William did not ask for humiliation. He did not demand that Camilla be pushed aside in public. He wanted one thing: Charlotte must never again be drawn into adult resentment. The future king told his father that criticism aimed at him or Catherine was something they could answer themselves, but their daughter should never be made to carry tension she did not create. Charles listened, then admitted something William had not expected. He should have acted more firmly after the earlier rehearsal dispute. The king believed his hesitation had allowed frustration to grow until it finally reached Charlotte. That confession carried weight because the relationship between father and son had often been complicated by distance, duty, and different ideas about the monarchy. Yet in that room, both men wanted exactly the same thing. Charles then made the boundary official within the family. Camilla would temporarily step away from private planning conversations involving ceremonial appearances by the Wales children. Ceremonial appearances are formal public duties in which members of the royal family attend events, represent the crown, or take part in traditional occasions. The decision was narrow, deliberate, and impossible to misunderstand. William later told Catherine exactly what had been decided. She did not celebrate. Instead, she worried that exclusion could deepen the anger already surrounding Charlotte. The Princess of Wales told him she wanted protection, not revenge, and she asked that no one use their daughter's hurt as an excuse to create another family war. He understood her point immediately. Camilla received the decision, expecting Catherine's fingerprints to be all over it. She was about to discover the opposite. The woman she had blamed had not demanded her removal at all, and that truth would force her to question where her resentment had really been aimed. That realization would make the next silence even heavier. There was no dramatic announcement, no public punishment. The consequence arrived quietly. Camilla was informed that a scheduled family planning discussion involving the Wales children would proceed without her. For several seconds, she simply stared at the message. Then she placed it beside her untouched tea and dismissed the aide from the room. The silence that followed forced her to confront something anger had previously hidden. Charles had chosen the boundary, and William had accepted it. Camilla read the message again, searching for some detail that might soften its meaning. None appeared. Charles's decision operated privately rather than constitutionally, meaning it affected family access and planning, but did not alter her formal position, title, or public duties. That distinction mattered because the king was not stripping her of status. He was limiting her influence where George, Charlotte, and Louis were concerned, and she immediately felt the humiliation of being excluded from a conversation she would normally have joined. Catherine refused to turn the dispute into palace gossip. She spoke only with William, and kept Charlotte away from every adult discussion that followed. The Princess of Wales understood why that restraint mattered. Once a child becomes the subject of whispered blame, even ordinary family moments can feel unsafe. William supported her decision, and together they agreed that protecting Charlotte meant reducing the drama, not feeding it. Camilla interpreted the silence differently. She became convinced Catherine had used the confrontation to tighten her control over the children's public roles. Anger gave that theory shape, until Charles came to see her later. The king did not circle around the issue. He told her plainly that Catherine had requested no punishment, and had actually warned that exclusion could deepen the conflict. The restriction, he said, was his decision alone. Camilla stopped arguing. For the first time, the person she had blamed was no longer available as an easy explanation. Charles then delivered the truth that changed the room completely. Charlotte had asked Catherine whether the queen disliked her. The monarch repeated the question slowly, forcing his wife to hear what the child had carried away from that confrontation. Camilla's anger collapsed into something quieter. She asked Charles whether Charlotte truly believed that, and he told her the question had been real. The queen said nothing for several moments. Then she asked for one thing: a private conversation with Catherine. The conflict had begun with power, hierarchy, and wounded pride. Now it was moving somewhere far more uncomfortable. No advisors would stand between them. No royal role could soften the words. And one child's question would sit at the center of everything they were about to say when they met. No aides entered the room. No courtiers waited beside them. Catherine and Camilla sat opposite each other with nothing to soften the conversation. For the first time since Charlotte had been hurt, neither woman could speak through Charles or William. Camilla began defensively, but Catherine stopped her with one sentence. This was no longer about rank. It was about a child leaving a family room wondering whether she was disliked. Catherine had agreed to the meeting for one reason. She wanted the tension settled before Charlotte was exposed to another painful moment. The Princess of Wales, the title traditionally held by the wife of the heir to the throne, understood how quickly private strain could spill into family life. She told Camilla that old disagreements could wait. Her daughter could not. Camilla had expected accusation and anger. Instead, Catherine described Charlotte asking whether she had caused the confrontation herself. The mother's voice remained steady at first, then weakened as she explained how deeply the remark had landed. Charlotte had not understood the politics behind it. She had only understood that an adult she knew had spoken to her with coldness. and she had carried that feeling away. Catherine then said something Camilla had not expected to hear. She revealed, during this private conversation, that she had previously asked Charles to keep the Queen involved in family gatherings because pushing her aside would only deepen resentment. The king had listened to that request, even when Catherine and Camilla disagreed elsewhere. That disclosure changed the balance of the room. Camilla finally admitted that frustration with Catherine and William had influenced her tone that day. She said the pressure she felt over the Wales family's growing role had become tangled with her judgment. The Queen Consort, meaning the wife of a reigning king, then acknowledged the truth she had resisted. Directing any part of that frustration toward Charlotte had been wrong. Catherine did not rush to comfort her. She simply let the admission stand. Camilla now understood that the woman she had blamed for narrowing her place inside the family had, in fact, argued for her inclusion. The realization stripped away the story she had been telling herself and left only the damage done to a child. Camilla asked one final question before leaving. Could she apologize directly to Charlotte? Catherine answered carefully. Yes, but only if Charlotte wanted to hear it. For Catherine, that choice belonged entirely to her daughter. That condition mattered. The palace could manage schedules, titles, and boundaries, but repairing what had happened required something authority could not command. A sincere apology offered without pressure, and accepted only by the person who had been hurt. Private royal disagreements rarely remain private forever. Within days, fragments of the fictional Windsor confrontation spread beyond the household. Commentators focused on Charles's anger, newspapers dissected Camilla's position, and supporters of William and Catherine rallied around Charlotte. Yet amid the noise, one image came to define the public mood. Not a confrontation, but a family arriving together while the young princess walked calmly between her parents. William hated seeing Charlotte's name dragged into public debate. He told Catherine that protecting their children now meant resisting the urge to answer every headline and returning family life to something steady. The Prince of Wales, the title traditionally used for the heir to the British throne, understood that silence could look weak from the outside. But he also knew that feeding the argument would keep his daughter trapped inside a story she had never chosen. Catherine agreed. She wanted Charlotte to feel normal, not watched. The princess refused to discuss the private dispute beyond the immediate family and urged William to do the same. Palace communications, meaning the official messages released on behalf of the royal household, offered no detailed account of the confrontation. That restraint mattered because every extra statement risked turning a painful family argument into a permanent public identity for Charlotte. Charles felt the cost differently. He knew the conflict had escaped the walls where it began, and he carried the burden of having failed to stop it earlier. The king became determined that reconciliation had to happen privately before speculation hardened into division. Camilla understood that pressure too, especially as public attention shifted from her argument with the adults to the effect her words had on a child. Then one fictional morning front page changed the tone completely. A newspaper ran the headline, "Charlotte caught in royal family rift," above an image of Catherine holding her daughter's hand outside Windsor Castle. The story framed the dispute not as palace rivalry, but as a question of whether royal children should ever be pulled into battles over status, influence, or visibility. William saw it and immediately turned the paper over. Catherine did not need to read further. Charlotte, meanwhile, made the decision that mattered most. That same afternoon, she told Catherine she was willing to hear Camilla's apology. Her mother passed the answer to William, and he told Charles privately. For the first time since the confrontation, the monarch felt something close to relief. The public had already delivered its judgment on the argument. Now came the only verdict that truly mattered. No headline, title, or protocol could decide what happened next. Everything depended on what Camilla said when she finally faced Charlotte again face to face. There was no audience when Camilla apologized. Charles was nearby, while Catherine and William allowed Charlotte to decide how much she wanted to hear. The Queen did not defend her wording or explain away the tension that caused it. She told Charlotte that adults sometimes allow their frustrations to reach places they never should, and that speaking to her that way had been wrong. The young princess listened before giving an answer. Nobody in the room forgot. Catherine had prepared Charlotte beforehand, making one thing clear: an apology did not create an obligation to forgive. The Princess of Wales, the title held by the wife of the heir to the throne, wanted her daughter to understand that her feelings mattered. William agreed. The prince stayed protective, but he gave Charlotte room to decide how much she wanted to say, and whether she wanted the conversation to continue. Camilla spoke without excuses. She told Charlotte that her frustration with the adults had reached someone who had done nothing wrong. The queen consort, meaning the wife of a reigning king, did not blame pressure, protocol, or misunderstanding. Charlotte answered quietly that she had worried she had disappointed the family. Those simple words hit harder than anger, because they revealed how deeply the moment had settled inside her. Charles spoke with Charlotte privately. He told his granddaughter that adults were responsible for managing adult disagreements, and that she should never feel responsible for fixing tensions she did not create. The king repeated the promise, because this was more than comfort. It was the principle that would shape what happened next. Charles kept the new boundaries around George, Charlotte, and Louis in place. He did not frame them as punishment for Camilla. Instead, he made them a family rule. The children would never again be used as symbols, leverage, or targets in disputes between senior royals. Catherine accepted Camilla's apology without pretending trust had returned overnight. William did the same, choosing restraint over revenge and boundaries over forced closeness. The confrontation ended with a lesson nobody could ignore. Camilla's mistake exposed the fracture. Charlotte's hurt forced the adults to face it. Catherine and William protected their child without turning pain into retaliation, and Charles proved that his anger mattered only because he followed it with action. The monarchy moved forward not because the conflict was forgotten, but because everyone understood where adult battles had to stop. That became the final verdict. Protect the youngest generation first, even when doing so forces the oldest wounds into the open. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.